Coffee time with Kendall. Kendall, for you all know, is a former Kansas City Chiefs, and he's got the name of this is called Deal or No Deal, and he'll be sharing stories about his 15-year career with the Chiefs or in the NFL, 12 years as a broadcaster for the Chiefs Radio Network, and he'll be talking about being grateful, making a difference, how his faith has carried him through excuse me, you know what I'm trying to say. And then he'll be talking a little bit about his football career as well. And for those of you who don't know, Kendall is a Pitt State Gorilla. So shout out to any other gorillas out there. And so if you don't mind, we'll open up in prayer, and then we'll looking forward to hearing Kendall talk. So, dear God, you're a wonderful God, and we just appreciate all the blessings you've given us, and we're thankful that we can gather this morning as a group of men in this interesting times that we're going through. And we're excited to hear what Kendall has to say, and how you have helped him throughout his both personal and professional life. And again, we just asked for your blessings and continue to look forward to the talk this morning. In your name we pray. Amen.
All right. Well, thanks, Matt. And thank you, everybody. First of all, just for allowing me to speak with you this morning. This is very inspiring to see so many people. And I can't think of a better way to spend a Saturday morning. I think I'll be on my game today. I will admit, as of 2.5 days ago, I came down with COVID. So I've been dealing with it. And wow, it's impressive. But I'm getting better now. So I appreciate it. Being asked to share my faith and how I came to faith, and that I look forward to telling. I don't tell this a lot. I never shy away. I just don't get asked all the time with it. But I'll take you back to Mulvane, Kansas, where I grew up for 10 years, and I think I was in the second or third grade. We had always gone to church. But I had a good buddy by the name of Bryson Butts, who actually ended up starting a church in Wichita later on in his life, a very strong faith. But I mean, we were little kids back then, and his family had this strong faith, and really, they're the ones who drove me and helped me out. Now, my parents took me to church every day or every Sunday, and we just lived down the street, so I could walk there. But there really wasn't much going on. It was this family that helped me. I can even remember back then that. Which unfortunately would not happen in this day and age, which was we could get on the school bus, and one day a month, I think we went to a house and had a kids Bible study that was age appropriate, where we had a Bible verse we had to memorize and everything, and we had a great deal of kids that did that, and that has always stuck with me because I just unfortunately think it was a little bit unique back then. I've been very appreciative of the fact that I got to do that. I also know that Bryson's mom and dad became like parents to me. Not that mine weren't, but they became parents to me. And that's something that really sticks in and really takes me back about as far as I can go about my faith and what I believe. Now, did I really understand things? I would be lying if I said yes. I mean, I believed and I went, but I had a lot of things going on. Fast forward a few years and moved over to Rose Hill, Kansas. We moved out to a farm and started doing that at the worst possible time. And so those were some stressful times as we went through that. And I'm going to get to that a little bit. But the one thing that I'll fast forward to is that my junior year in high school, through a girlfriend that I was dating, we went to her Bible study on if not a weekly basis, and every other week basis. And specifically, I remember one time him calling folks to Christ and to see if there was anybody that wanted to dedicate and become a Christian. And I already believed I was and was really acting as such. But that was one specific time where I became a little bit verklempt, and there was something that moved over me that I just won't ever forget. I had a hard time breathing for a second, and then I went over and prayed with the gentleman who was leading it. And I think well, it's always important to share, but I think things like that are important to share because sometimes people, either they've never not had that and they have a hard time uh, imagining anybody else, or they have had that and they'd like to know that others have had that. And I think that's why we fellowship, so we can tell the stories with that. That being said, as I've gone through my life, I unfortunately, but realistically, I've ebbed and flowed with things, and been on the ball all the time. And then sometimes not, but the one thing that's never wavered is my faith in Christ and what he does for me, and for everyone really. But it's been an interesting life for me. As Matt mentioned, I went to Pittsburgh State. And then I managed to spend 15 years in the NFL. I was picked by the Pittsburgh Steelers in the 11th round in 1991 or 1992. And, it was, if you look at my life from college on, and what most people see, you see this storybook kind of, because, I play at Pittsburgh State. We're national champions. I'm all league 3 years. I'm all American. I'm in the NFL. I play for the Steelers. I play in a Super Bowl. I don't remember the score. Scores aren't important, right? But we lost to the Steelers, by the way. And then I come to my hometown with the Chiefs, finish it there. I've been in a Pro Bowl. I was the first long snapper ever added to a Pro Bowl roster in 2005. Very proud of that. And then I take a year off after I retire in 2015 of my own volition. And then I come on the Chiefs radio network for 12 years. And so, I have a beautiful family and everything that goes along with that. And so I think that's what people see. But, if I go back to my years in Rose Hill and leading up to college, well, people would know that from age 10 on, I was abused emotionally and physically by my mom. I stopped the physical abuse when I was 16, when I made a decision. And it was actually after she had just backed me into a corner and had been hitting me in the head. And I just came to a realization that I had to stop this. And I would say, as I think about it, that had to be strength that I drew from my faith somehow, that this wasn't right. Now, that was tough. My parents fought on an almost daily basis because, as I said, we got into the farming business at the worst possible time. So stress was there all the time for the money side of things. And I remember one time, actually, when I was 16, hearing my parents fight upstairs and really hearing it on a daily basis. Something kind of snapped a little bit, and I went to my brother's room next door. I was in the basement, his room, and I got his shotgun and I came over and I held it and just thought, would this solve my problems? And, as I've heard it said, it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And, thankfully, and I would say it's my faith there somehow, without knowing it, that made me realize, okay, this is stupid. This isn't what you want to do. And, I don't tell those things certainly not for sympathy or anything, but to really help people. Because I tell this all over the country, because I speak for some companies. I'm on retainer at leadership sides, and I try to make sure they understand that, we all face different difficulties, and we all face things that maybe people couldn't imagine. And I think it's important for me. It allows me to maybe identify with others, and them to identify with me and understand, okay, what I see from the outside is not it. And it's not always perfect. And I think that draws me into a little bit of what I talk about. In our lives, I think we have three distinct silos. We have our personal life, we have our family and friends life, and we have our professional life. If you're a student, or if you're younger or whatever, your professional life is your studies and maybe your athletics, and if you're in college or in high school and you're part of that. But otherwise, it's pretty self-explanatory. And I know for me, and I think through my literally at this point, years of counseling that I've done and will continue to do and have no problem talking about. I think I found out that because of when I was younger and everything that happened with my mother and stuff that went on, that I was embarrassed of it, and for a while thought that it was, I think, my fault. And I think it pushed me to try to look perfect in this world to everybody, to make sure everybody knew I wasn't hurting. And I think you can obviously see this still affects me to this day. And trust me, I've made tremendous progress. But the fact is, bad things happen in life, and you have to realize with it and realize it. And I know you all do. And I'm maybe a broken record, but getting back to the story is, I think I decided I needed to look perfect to everybody in whatever phase I could to make sure that everything was okay, because I didn't want to show that hurt. Now, I prayed about things privately, and I sometimes tried to get help. For the most part, though, I did not ask for help. And I think that's something that we can learn from, really, which is nothing's ever too good or too bad to ask for help. I mean, it is what it is. And I think that's, really big when you look at this accountability group you have here in the men's group. You all should be able to go to each other in some fashion. I mean, you may have an inner circle, I'm sure you all do, where there's certain people that you're more comfortable with, and that makes sense. But there's always somebody that wants to help. I know that for certain. I think, unfortunately for me, a lot of this stuff younger on, it pushed towards my life later on. And as I learned as a kid, you learn to cope, but about halfway through your life, things come to light, and things really kind of well up a little bit. And that's what happened to me. Unfortunately, my marriage failed 4 years ago after 24 years. And that was a shock to everybody. I played a big part in that. No doubt about it. I have realized now that no one person does something, that it does take two. And that's not an indictment on my former wife. That's just simply, I think, what we know to be true. And it's tough, because I was this squeaky clean person who did everything. But as I said, always trying to be perfect and look the part in those three phases of my life, of our life, which is, again, your personal life, your family and friends, and then your professional. And it was really humbling. And I wish it hadn't come away that way, but I don't have control of that. And what I do have control of is every day that I start and how I approach everything. And I always think that's very important to remember and to humble ourselves. I know for me, that brings me a little bit, and I'll be all over the board a little bit, but it brings me to what I think is the most important emotion, which is gratitude, being thankful for so many things we have in our life. Dr. Robert Emmons out of University of Cal Davis has written several books, and there's lots of documentation on, just the power of gratitude and us either taking time each day to be thankful, to journal it, to sit there and meditate, whatever it may be, for as little as a few minutes, but doing that over a period of time, the results are amazing in terms of the quality of life that we get and receive and grow from being grateful on a daily basis. I mean, for me, every single day, when I wake up, I read the GPS from my church. I go to CORE, and I was raised Methodist and still go Methodist. And that GPS is grow, pray, and study. And that's how I start my day. And in this age of hashtags and social media and certainly all that stuff can be bad, but it's got some good stuff too, I think. Sometimes you have to look, obviously. But I try not to start with that stuff. I try to make sure to start with the number one thing, which is a word from God, and how he'll speak to me. And it's amazing to me how so many times the message of that day, filters over to something that I've either got going on or that I'm going to, that I end up experiencing and don't even know. And I think, I think you can only experience that as as they say, a God thing. And that's what happens to me quite a bit. So I think that's important to note. The gratitude side of things, I mean, this weather itself, I'm thankful for the weather. I don't particularly enjoy it out there, but I also know that I don't have to particularly enjoy it out there, whereas a lot of people do, and a lot of people are dealing with food and some other different things like that, the insecurities. What's something that I failed to mention also, which is I grew up food insecure at times also. So being grateful for these little things and not taking them for granted, I think, is so huge in life. It's just I don't know, that's one thing that I speak about all the time. It's been refreshing to me that the companies that bring me in appreciate the fact that I want to talk about gratitude, and that I want to talk about making a difference, making a positive difference in the life of others. But that being said, you make a difference in the life of others, you need to first make a difference in yourself also, because if you're not making a difference in yourself and taking care of yourself first, then eventually you run out of what I call emotional oxygen. And I get that from, we've all flown probably in some way, and they talk about if they lose cabin pressure, the mask will fall and oxygen is flowing. But not to put it around others first, put it around yourself first, then others. And that's kind of the metaphor I use when I speak, which is, it's great to want to help others, and we're called to do that, but we have to make sure that emotionally inside that we're okay as well. And if we don't, while we may help people for years and years, eventually we run out of emotional oxygen. And honestly, that's what happened to me at age, I guess it would have been about 47. I finally ran out. I was trying to be too perfect, to be too much to everybody. But in the meantime, I let myself die. The relationship with me and my wife somewhat died, and it went downhill from there. And really, I lost my family for a little while, and that was tough, to say the least, because that was the one thing I always wanted. So it's been a struggle, and I talk about all of these different things, which I think people would basically describe as being vulnerable, for a reason, which is to make sure people understand that somebody who maybe looks the part outwardly, they all of a sudden know more. They're like, okay, well, he's no different. So that's what I try to share when I go around and speak. So back to my faith a little bit. I think it's a beautiful thing. I'll get this, I gotta see this. We've all seen this, right? It's the easy button, and I liken this to our faith, and just the fact to be saved, that all we need to do is believe in Jesus Christ, and we can be saved. And I know I'm paraphrasing everything, and I'm not one who's going to quote things very well. I do have some verses that I love and stuff, and I read, but I'm not great at that part of it. But while it is easy to that, certainly the walk isn't easy at times, because we have so many things vying for our attention, and it's easy to get caught up in the wrong things. And I think that's something that we all deal with. And so I do this when I put this here, so you can see this. Does this remind anybody of anything? And I know you can't talk right now, but I think probably some people are out there thinking, okay, that's the button, or that's the thing from Deal or No Deal with Howie Mandel, right? And so it's basically about choosing the box with the most money and everything, and they get to a certain point, and they've got a choice to take the deal or not. They can take it, or they can hold out for more money, and with the chance of getting the $1 million. And of course, the odds are astronomical that they're going to win that million, but it's that allure of having the chance. And I use this metaphor to hopefully really give the example of something I think that we all deal with, because we're human, which is, I think we were born with free will, and we want to do things, and we want to have as much as possible. But sometimes we have to restrain ourselves. And I think this word, certainly in this world today, with everything that we see, that we hear, how we're inundated with commercials, it's always get this and you'll be happy, get that and you'll be happy, get those and you'll be happy. And you know what? There's no doubt. And, the little joke I've heard, which is, money can't buy happiness. And somebody says, well, I mean, it can buy a wave runner. And you ever seen anybody, not happy on a wave runner? Well, yeah, no, I agree with that. But eventually it ebbs, and you would get tired of it. Trust me, I'm sure that's got to be the case. But what I'm getting at is material things don't make us happy. It's relationships. It's making a difference with others. It's the immaterial things that are the most material, if that makes any sense. And I think with this, too often in life, and everybody does that. I mean, if you think you don't, it would be hard pressed for me to believe that in some way, shape, or form somebody hasn't dealt with this. Is too often, we've pressed the button and we've got the relationship already, but now we're having things put in front of us, but we're like, well, but I've got my faith and I need to do this, whatever. And all of a sudden we close the box. And, sometimes we close that box for a day or two. Sometimes we close that box for a year or two. Sometimes we close that box for a decade or two. And it's too much out here that we want to take a chance to get. And so now all of a sudden we can't get to the button. We can't press that. We can't reignite our faith, which is really what fuels us and fuels everybody. And basically is what gave us life. So, that's a little bit maybe of a crude, a crude way to talk about it, but it's one that I think, makes a lot of sense, because in this life, as I mentioned earlier, it's about relationships. It's about first and foremost your relationship with God and where you are there, and then it should come your spouse, I believe. Then it should come your family, and then everything else. And I don't think anybody ever gets that right all the time. I think we oftentimes strive to get it right as much as possible. But I know from my standpoint, anyhow, I mess up all the time. And that's where I'm just another time where I'm thankful for God's grace and mercy and what he does for us. If there's one thing I'm pretty enamored about, it is God's grace, because I make mistakes all the time. I made them with my family. I've healed with my boys, and it's a tough one. I know that, but it was a road I needed to go down because of my history younger, and I need to heal some things. I go to counseling probably on a basically a weekly basis, and it's been the best thing for me. And I talk all those things that I talk to you about, I talk to corporate about also. And I have literally never done a talk where I do tell my story about my abuse and about the suicide thoughts, where I've never done a talk where I've not had somebody contact me afterwards, either in person right there, by text, or by email, that they appreciated me talking about it, and they had encountered some same things. I had one person right after a talk that I did in West Virginia a couple of years ago come up to me and say he appreciated me talking about it, because a couple months ago his 9mm had misfired, or else he wouldn't be there today. And when you hear stories like that, and that's a pretty grand one, obviously, that makes you think, wow, okay. But we all have this ability to talk to our spouse, to our kids, to our accountability groups, the group that you have here. We all have the ability to do that if we choose to, and to make ourselves vulnerable. I'm going to just indulge me a little bit. I've got 5 key points of my life mission statement that I wrote April 17th, 2005. So I want to share that with you. I will inspire everyone to identify and appreciate people and values in life. I will demonstrate to all that it's okay to be vulnerable, and that it's actually power that helps break down obstacles in life. Real people aren't perfect. I will allow all to not only see, but know the real me. I will touch people positively long after I left this earth, and I will help all realize that they are not defined by what job they may have, but by the emotions they may stir. Now, that's very meaningful to me. Again, I mean, I know when I wrote it, I've got it memorized. I share it when I speak. And for me, it's what I try to guide my life by. I mean, after uh, my faith, although I believe it's my faith that helped with that. So to a degree, it's one and the same. But um, when you look at every part of that, there's nothing physical to any of that. It's all about emotions, it's about relationships, about helping people. And I think we could do a lot worse than to do some of those things, at least in my case. So it's, you know, if anybody ever sees me on social media or anything, you'll see that I have a lot of stuff out there, and I basically deal with gratitude and kindness and making a difference. And that's what I do. I speak with people, and I try to get them to share, people who are maybe a little bit more notable, and get them to share real stories about what they're thankful for and what they're grateful for, because it's my hope that then other people will see them as real and see them as no different than themselves, and hopefully they can identify. So I'm getting close to some of my time, so I just want to share a few more things that are kind of well, they make sense here. So a little bit kind of a, if you don't know, I was a long snapper in the NFL for 15 years. So I threw a piece of aired up leather between my legs as fast and as accurately as possible. As I always say, only in America can you do that and get paid for it. It was a beautiful country, but it's kind of an odd thing. So it then should not surprise you that actually my greatest talent is juggling. I started juggling when I was in the 8th grade. I lived on a farm. My cousins juggled. I thought it looked cool. So I got a 2x2 pole, cut it into 18-inch strips, put it in the vice grip, got a draw knife, drew a handle, made it round, spray painted them black, put duct tape on the handles, and lo and behold, I had 3 juggling clubs. And I learned to juggle clubs before I learned to juggle balls, just because I didn't know any better. And I took that to a point of actually competing nationally. At one point, I used to be able to juggle 7 balls. I can still juggle 5 balls and talk to you. And I used to be able to, you know, juggle 5 clubs and do all kinds of different things. And actually, while I was still playing for the Chiefs, I juggled twice at Center Ring for Ringling Brothers, which was my Super Bowl of juggling. So it was kind of a really cool thing. But the reason I bring it up is when I speak, I always juggle balls, clubs, rings, and I have metaphors that goes along with it, because the 3 things that we're juggling, to me, that signifies the 3 areas of our life that I talked about, which was, again, your personal life, your family and friends, and your professional life. Now, there is one other part, but I see that as the space that everything is in, and that's our faith, and that's God, and everything that is that. So you could say there's a 4th part, but it just depends on how you want to look at that. But anyhow, when I'm speaking, I do that, and I juggle the balls and clubs and have some fun with it. And then I juggle rings, and I got one here. So when I'm juggling, when I'm looking at it, and I've got 3 of these, I see it straight on each and every time. So this is my view. So even if I turn around and I'm juggling this way, now you can see it, and I'm juggling. I have the same view, but you can see this is a white ring. And then I'll turn around this side, and again, I've still got this view, but now you see it. It's a red side, and I've got 2 other rings, and one has green on one side, and the other one. The other ring is blue and white. And I juggle these for a reason, which is I'm talking about perspectives, which is if I'm juggling right here, this is the view I have of something, and I know I see it. But if I have somebody over here, they're what color the ring is, they're going to naturally tell me red. If I ask somebody over here, they're going to tell me it's white. And my question to you would be, who's right and who's wrong? And the simple fact is, we're all right and we're all wrong. And the point I try to drive to people is a lot of things in life, you know what? There's a lot of different ways to look at it. And there's not always one true right or wrong answer. Now there is in our faith, certainly, but we also deal with other things in life that can be that can be very difficult. And I think it's important in this day and age, especially, to try to respect the view of somebody else, even if you absolutely can't agree with it. And the fact is, for me, if I'm juggling, there's no way for me to see from this side or this side. I've simply got to trust somebody that what they see is what they see, and have faith that that's true, even though I'm seeing it this way. And hopefully you can see the point I'm trying to drive home with there is what, as I always say, just because I think I'm right doesn't mean I'm always right. And now it doesn't mean I'm wrong either. It means there may be a couple different views to this, and it may be a very difficult problem to think about or to figure out. And I just hopefully maybe you can discern a little bit from that. And as I continue to go on in my talk, and I'll get to the end, and then I always like to have fun with it, and then I'll get a bowling ball out. So if I was there, if we weren't in the COVID times and we were speaking, I would have a chance, and I would end up juggling bowling balls for you. Number one, because you don't see that very often. And generally it provides an anchor if I'm juggling bowling balls, and you're going to remember a little bit of what I talked about because you had that crazy NFL player who came and juggled bowling balls. But this bowling ball, this I use as a metaphor for this, which is, you remember earlier when I talked about trying to look perfect to everybody from all shapes and sides. And, I just showed that in the different perspectives, and how, really there's the three distinct sides to that. And again, the power of three there with what I was talking about with the 3 parts of my life, you can liken that to the 3 parts of life. But, I say this sometimes also with people is nobody's a bowling ball. I tried to be a bowling ball for about 47 years. I tried to look perfect in every part of my life, in whatever way I could. And I did a pretty damn good job of it, unfortunately. Because I think if I'd cracked earlier, things would have been different. But I am where I am, and I'm okay now. But I liken it to this, because a bowling ball, perfectly round, perfectly beautiful color, and no matter how I turn it, or no matter how I look at it, or whatever, I don't get to do that when I'm speaking on stage very often, spin around in a chair. But no matter what, it's one perfect spherical object. It looks the same no matter what. And the fact is, that's not possible. No one is a bowling ball. The worst thing we can do, I believe, number one, for ourselves, and then number two, for our family and friends, is to try to give this illusion of perfection, that we have got it all together. I don't believe we ever have it all together. I know I do not. And I think it's only through our faith in God and our understanding that we are fallible, and that he does have grace and mercy for us, and he wants to help. I think that's the way we deal with life, and understand that it's okay. It's not only okay to not be perfect, it's really not something that can happen. There's nothing wrong with striving to be perfect, and to be the best we can. I think we're called to do that, to use what gifts we've been given to the best of our ability. But the fact is, I don't believe in this life that anybody is perfect or has been perfect. The only one that we would say has been perfect left this earth a long time ago. So I hope, it would be my challenge to you, which is first and foremost, be grateful for what you have in your life, and the difference that you have a chance to make in the life of others. I think that needs to start with ourself internally, and our faith, and emanate then out through our family, and then to our friends and this world in whatever fashion we can. I would say communication is so important. You want to make a difference with people, you want to do good things, you've got to be able to communicate with people the best you can. And I think that's very important. We kind of have a physical side of communication, which I think is kind of the outwards, and we kind of candy coat things. But I think the emotional communication, really diving in to the people you work with, and understanding what's going on with them, being aware of their family, things like that nature, making sure they understand that you care and that and that they're just not a number. I think that makes a huge difference, because to me, it drives relationships. And I think relationships in this world are the most important thing. First and foremost, our faith. And after that, everything else. And I think when we keep those things in mind and we understand that we're going to fail at times, but that doesn't derail us, then I think that gives us a chance. And that's all we can really ever ask. And I think that's all we need to be thankful for, as we get that chance each and every day. So I know time wise, I'm about there. I hope you got something from that. I hope you guys have some questions to ask. Certainly, I know long snapping is wildly interesting, but I invite you to ask any question you like. So with that, Matt, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. So Kendall, great job. Thank you. And I actually have a couple things. Would you, but a little bit slower, repeat your personal mission statement
Oh,
for
yes.
us?
Yeah. And I'll push it to you all also, so you can put it out if you want. But I will inspire everyone to identify and appreciate people and values in life. I will demonstrate to all that it's okay to be vulnerable, and that it's actually power that helps break down obstacles in life. Real people aren't perfect. I will allow all to not only see, but know the real me. I will touch people positively long after I've left this earth. And I will help all realize that they are not defined by what job they may have, but by the emotions they may stir. And that last one was very important to me, Matt, because um, understandably, everybody looked at me as a football player, which makes sense. I did it for 15 years in the NFL and 5 in college. But as I've always said, football is what I did. It's not who I am. And it's my hope that who I am is something much more complex than just a guy that throws a piece of aired up leather between his legs.
So another question is, especially early in your career, sometimes there's people who in the NFL might have an ego,
Right.
and big macho guys. Did you find it difficult expressing yourself being a Christian? Especially when you're kind of a rookie and kind of the new guy versus a veteran. And how did you handle that?
You know what? That's a great question. And I'll tell you, the biggest thing that helped was there were people in the locker room, and they were mentors. They were the veterans that really gave you permission to be yourself, because they were themselves, and they had a faith, and really faith in the locker room is rampant. I mean, it's in a good place. We hear about the bad parts of the NFL, and I think sports and athletics in general, because unfortunately it sells newspapers, or it draws people to the TV, or it invites clicks on the internet. But I'll tell you, there's a lot of good people in the locker room, and there's a strong faith in the locker room. And it honestly, I never once had anybody say anything about me leading my life the way I did. And plus I had people to pattern after. And sometimes I was that person also. And sometimes I did a great job, and maybe sometimes I didn't do a great job. And that wasn't that I was doing anything bad so much as I just maybe wasn't, I wasn't out there as much as I could be. But it's really amazing, and especially in this day and time of what we're dealing with, inclusion and race and everything. There are no better race relations, I believe, than in an NFL locker room. I mean, in a football locker room. And I think you can ask anybody that has been in there. It's really amazing, and it's too bad that we can't get to that point, and hopefully we will sometime. But that's something that I think is really worth noting.
Well, okay, I got a couple more.
Of course, I'll go as
Um,
fast as possible.
so actually, I've got three more. So give me a second here. So the next one is, what do you do? You talked earlier about your emotional oxygen.
Yeah.
So could you repeat, what do you do to rejuvenate that every day?
Well, okay. So my big thing I mentioned is at Core, they put something out each day. They put it out about 3:30 or 4 in the morning on email, and it's the GPS Grow Pray Study. And so it takes about 5 minutes to read. It's just a devotional with the message that week. Everything that's really um, kind of harkens back to what either harkens back to what Pastor Adam or whatever pastor spoke that week talked about in the sermon, or what they're going to talk about. And so I think that's my biggest thing. I find if I meditate and just find quiet for at least 5 minutes, that helps me tremendously to turn off all devices and everything. And now, when I say meditate, I mean, to me, that's based. To me, that's prayer. But we can say it however we want. That's how I say it. But I think getting back in touch and just you know trying to take away as many distractions as possible so I can see what's going on up here, and listen, and that for me, Matt, is really a difference maker. And when I get away from that, I really recognize it in a way that's not favorable. So it's something that I need to get back. But again, sometimes I do. I get caught up in the world and what's going on, and I've got things I've got to do and get done, and I all of a sudden, I lapse a little bit. But whereas I used to beat myself up for things like that, now I simply just go back to it and get started again and realign myself.
Thank you. All right. So I got another one that popped up as well. So
Awesome.
with all the division in society, how are you keeping communications open within your circles?
You know what? It's really been tough. Unfortunately, and it may be hard to believe, I'm very much a loner. I'm an introvert. I'm a socialized extrovert. I've got a real problem with I've got a real problem with keeping in touch with people, or them keeping in touch with me. How is this? My whole mantra is make a difference with others, and I try to help people out as much as possible. And generally, I ignore myself, and that took its toll. So I'm trying to reach out more to some of my friends, and therefore they'll reach out a little bit. But it's really been done through probably Zoom a little bit with a former football team at times, and uh, text. I mean, unfortunately, as bad as we think this device is at times for some things, it's also a lifesaver. Um, but my job with Pittsburgh State is I'm the assistant to the president, and so that has me out and about a fair amount. And this year, even, I still got out. I think I hit about every COVID hotbed there was throughout things, and then all of a sudden I ended up getting COVID from being down in Pittsburgh, Kansas. So crazy things happen. But so I get out and about, but I guess I'm pontificating a little bit. But ultimately, it's a challenge for me. But I think it's a challenge for everybody, and I think that's a good segue into the fact, though, that's very important now more than ever for us to realize that there's a lot of people out there who are dealing with seclusion and need somebody just to check in. They need to know that somebody cares, and that's really important. I mean, we're pack animals. We want to be a part of people. We want to be a part of something. And when we feel like we're divided from it, I believe, even if it's through things that are not under our control, or things that we know people aren't trying to seclude us from, when we get that seclusion, our mind has a tendency to wander, I think. So again, more important than ever.
Thank you. All right. So the next one is, what would you say to a man who wanted to let everyone know who they really are, to free us up or to inspire us to actually be that vulnerable? Because it's we're just not normally wired that way as men,
Right.
right? We're supposed to be
Yep.
macho and all that stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and yeah, communication for men is not what we were wired to do, apparently, because we don't do a good job of it. Uh, I think the first and foremost is recognizing it. If you're asking that question, then you realize that you have a hard time communicating, or that men in general. And I think we have to recognize it, and we have to reach out, and reach out to one person to start with, and just ask if you can share a few things with them. My guess is, if they're a friend, and even if they're not a great friend, more than likely they're going to say, yeah, what do you need to talk about? Or they're going to direct you to somebody. I think hopefully hearing my story, or going and hearing other people's stories of people, and what they talk about, I think reading about it a little bit, and just trying to make yourself as knowledgeable as possible about the fact of, okay, this is something that's not completely my fault. My gender struggles with this, but I don't want to, and I'm going to figure out a way. And I think it's just a process, and ultimately, you've got to take some action. You've just got to do it, and you've got to step out on faith a little bit.
Very good. Thanks again. And I got one more.
Yeah.
Um, how do you balance your life, faith, and family during your football career?
Uh, that's interesting, because that's something I talk about also. I used to talk about all the time of life balance. And then I realized, I don't know if there's any really true life balance. I think there's healthy life imbalance. And let's take juggling again. This is a metaphor I use, is if I'm juggling three objects, I've only got two hands. So there's one thing in the air all the time. And that's my focus, is the one thing in the air. Okay, so that's what I'm focused on. But the other two are in my hands. I don't see them, but I know they're there. And it changes differently, and some things are in the air more than others. But when we have those two things in our hands, and we're focused on the one, then we see the three parts of our life, even though it's not balanced right then. But the minute that we just focus on the one thing in the air, and that's all we're focused on, the other two fall to the ground. They're not in our hands. And that's when I think things really go wrong. I'll tell a story. You know a little bit, but both my boys were in NICU at birth, had multiple surgeries. And I can remember, this one will be hard for me to tell again, but I remember, having a game in the Superdome in New Orleans, because I played there for a while. And my youngest, Drake, had been born for a week, and he's in NICU. He's got tubes and everything coming out of him, and all this stuff. And I'm going to go see him after the game. I literally went from the game straight to his bedside. Now, if I had been focused on anything but the game at hand, and it would have been easy to focus on other things, I would have had a hard time. And I guess what I'm getting at is, I can't balance it. I couldn't be out on the field thinking about my son, or other things going on. I believe that God gives us the ability to focus and compartmentalize when we need to. And it's not that football was more important than my son, but it's something I had to focus on right then, to be able to then go focus on something else. And I think it's things like that. And hopefully you see the example I'm trying to give, but it's things like that that I personally don't think are possible unless you do have faith. And that it's that faith that surrounds everything, as I mentioned, that gives you the strength to compartmentalize and have that healthy life imbalance. And that's the best way. That's the best example I can give, if that made sense.
Yeah. So while you were talking, I got two more questions.
Yeah.
Um, so give us your one or two analysis of what you think happened last weekend with the Chiefs.
Yeah, that's a great one. You know what? I think the offensive line was just too much to overcome. They had a good defense. Tom Brady's obviously great, and he played well that game. The two games before, didn't think. I don't think it was so much Tom Brady's performance as it was the defense of Tampa Bay. But I will say, I think it was Tom Brady's presence and the leadership that he brings to that team, to take a team that doesn't make the playoffs to a team that wins the Super Bowl. There's some intangibles there that you can't deny. And I've been saying Tom was done for 3 years, so I've been wrong. I mean, that's just, there's no other way to put it. I think the other thing is, because of the offensive line and how they were, Patrick being as mobile as possible was a necessity, and it simply wasn't. I mean, he had turf toe. He's already had surgery for it. You got to give him credit. He says that it didn't affect him in the AFC Championship game in the Super Bowl. That is absolutely wrong. There's no way, and you know this if you've had a turf toe. I've got a permanent turf toe, and it sounds like a little thing, but it's awful. And there's no way it didn't affect him, and he couldn't move around as much and as quickly as he would have liked. So would have it changed the game? I don't think enough. They might have gotten to the end zone a time or two more, but in general, I think that's the big thing. And he is a special guy. I was fortunate enough to interview him after his first start, his rookie year, the last game of the season. And he is what you think he is if you think this is a kid who's centered and grounded and gets it. And he is. I mean, the dude has got it all together. It's something like I've never seen before. So we're seeing something special, and I think we're fortunate that we're going to get to watch it for a long time here in Kansas City.
Okay. And then would you, excuse me, talk a little bit about referring to your faith when a team loses a big game like they did last week, and keeping in perspective that it's just a game.
Yeah, it is just a game. You're right, and it's hard because it's at such a high level and there's so much at stake. But I do think that's important for us to recognize, and you can basically throw in whatever profession you're in or whatever big event you've got going on in your life into a game, and understand that those are all they're ultimately, it's what I talked about with the box and Deal or No Deal. It's all ultimately the outward stuff, the worldly stuff that calls us, that we want to be so successful at. And there's nothing wrong with that. But ultimately, it's not the most important thing. The most important thing is our faith and our relationship with God. And I think when we get that in order, and if we can do that as much as possible, because we're all going to mess up at times, I believe, at least I know I do. I think when we recognize that, then I think honestly, that's what allows us to maybe perform at an even higher level. And God gives us these gifts and wants us to use them to the best of our ability. And ultimately, even if things don't come out the way we want and we're not on top, if we've used them to the best of our ability, then we've done all we can, and we should try to remain confident in that. I mean, I was always very grateful. I played in the Super Bowl with the Steelers. We lost, and that's tough, because I almost had that chance to be, have the big ring and be in the parade and everything. But I always did, and every time I talked about it, I always talked about the fact of there's so many people in the NFL who never even get to that game. So I was so thankful for the fact that I had that experience and got to be around that. And I was grateful for that. And I think that's an important thing to realize, and is understand that we do a lot of things, and maybe we fell, but we're still fortunate. And I think that's kind of hard sometimes, but I mean, it was certainly hard for me for a while. I mean, after that game, I was in tears. I was in tears the year before, when we lost in the AFC Championship game on the last play of the game, or else we would have been there also. I mean, it meant so much to me, but ultimately, it's still just another worldly thing.
Well, Kendall, on behalf of the men's ministry and Colonial, I really appreciate you taking time out of your Saturday morning to talk to us. I know personally, it's opened up my eyes, even though we've known each other for a long time. a lot of things you don't always know about a
Right.
person. And so I do appreciate you sharing that. And I think it'll probably give all of us a little bit more strength that if we're suffering, to go to somebody and talk to them about it. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, I enjoy hearing about the football stuff, but uh, this stuff very relatable. And so, um, if anybody, Kendall, I'm going to ask if you would email me when you have time your mission statement.
Okay.
And then if anybody wants that, I'll give you my email address now. And you can email me and I'm happy to forward it to you. It's Matt, Matt, Kaminsky, Kaminsky, 68 at gmail.com. And if you want it, like I said, I'll be more than happy to forward it to you. And then the last thing before we wrap up is the men's ministry has formed the men's tailgate groups. They're offering colonial men an opportunity to connect with God while pursuing interests and passions in the company of other men. If you're interested, you can go to www.colonialkc.org/featured and go on there to sign up if you like. And again, Kendall, appreciate everything you did for us and getting up early this morning.
Well, Matt, okay, I appreciate it very much. I'll say one last thing. I'm going to give you have them, but I'll make sure everybody knows. Matt has my email address and my cell number. And if for any reason, certainly there's people on here that you could talk to, but if for whatever reason you're not comfortable talking to them about something, you can get my contact information from Matt. And if you email me, I'll get back to you within a day. If you text me or call me, we will talk. This is not something different. I do this every time that I speak, no matter where it is. I give my email and cell number out because I want people to know that I'm available to help if possible. So I'll just make sure that you all know that. And I appreciate. I assume you were a tenant. This is kind of a different way to look at things, but I appreciate. I'm humbled the fact that you would think enough of me that you want me to speak to you this morning, and I hope you got something from it. And with that, God bless.
Thanks, Kendall.
Thank you.
Stay warm, everybody.